Since the last census in 2010, Hispanics made up roughly half of Texas's population growth. Hispanics also tend to skew Democratic by roughly 2 to 1. Now, that growth could equal a lot more voting power for Democrats. But a new poll out today sheds more light on how these voters see themselves. Maybe you've heard this term lately. It's right there on that chart. Latinx. It's meant as a gender-inclusive term instead of Latino or Latina. But if anyone supports the new term, it seems most Hispanics do not. According to the poll, only 2% of U.S.-born Hispanics describe themselves as Latinx. 2%. But 71% say they prefer the term Hispanic. And 40% say they are bothered or offended by the term Latinx. Let's get into that with Paola Ramos. She's the former deputy director of Hispanic media for Hillary Clinton's 2016 presidential campaign. And she is also the author of Finding Latinx, in search of the voices redefining Latino identity. Ms. Ramos, welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me, and congrats on the launch.
Oh, gosh, thank you so much. I'm glad that you are with us to talk about this. This is very much up our alley and yours as well. First of all, could I just ask you about this term, Latinx? When did we begin hearing this, seeing this? Where did this term come from?
So the term itself starts to sort of pop up in these online circles in the early 2000s, right? And initially, it was queer Latinos that were using the term as a way to be more inclusive, particularly of gender nonconforming folks and queer folks. The interesting thing about the word, though, Josh, is that from the early 2000s until this moment, if you go on Google, you start to see that Google Trends start spiking, right? There's more and more people that start to use the term, wonder what the term means, and this is where we are right now. Now, it's become a term where folks that are beyond the queer Latinx world use it, right? I've heard undocumented folks use it, after Latinos use it, queer Latinos use it. I've heard folks that don't speak Spanish use it, and that's kind of the controversy behind the term. People don't know what to make of it.
Do you think that's partly why the results of the poll were what they were, that maybe Hispanic people, Latino people don't see the term as coming from the community, but rather as something that's sort of imposed from the outside?
Honestly, I think what we're seeing right now is the right being really good at what they do, right? The right has done an incredible job at stigmatizing the word, right? I mean, the amount of times that I've heard that the word Latinx means that you're a lefty or a communist, when really the root of the word is simply a more inclusive way to refer to the over 60 million Latinos living in this country, right? That is the root and the heart of the word. Sometimes language takes us towards progress and towards change in faster ways than society does. That's what Latinx tries to do, right? It tries to simply include more of us. But I think what we're seeing now is that this word has become so controversial to the point that Latinos see that word and reject it. And so to me, the most interesting part of that poll is understanding those 40% that see this word as bothersome. What about the word truly is bothersome? Right. And I think that's what we really have to dig into. There's something about the image that Latinx evokes, right, that irritates some Latinos the wrong way, right? To suddenly see themselves next to a Black Latino, next to an undocumented Latino or a trans Latino. There's something about that image that rubs some Latinos the wrong way. And that, I think, is more interesting.
Do you use the term Latinx? How do you describe yourself?
I do. I proudly say the word Latinx. I do always encourage people to identify however they want. I think there's a lot of pride in being able to say, soy Mexicana, I'm Cuban, I'm Nicaraguan. There's a lot of pride in that. But when I refer to ourselves collectively in this moment, I try and be as inclusive as possible. The word isn't perfect. Now, there's a lot of problems with that word, definitely. But in this moment, I believe it's the only word that accurately attempts to represent the diversity of who we are, which we honestly haven't done a really good job at that as a community.
In a way, I feel like it's good that we're even able to have this kind of conversation. I mean, I grew up in South Florida, where just calling somebody Latino is not necessarily enough. Like, you need to understand, are you Cuban? Are you Dominican? Are you Venezuelan? Are you Puerto Rican? Like, what piece of the diaspora are you from? Because that shapes a tremendous amount about how we talk to you about issues. So even within that term, there are layers. And I think politically we're starting to get savvy to that. I wonder, in terms of the way that this this term plays out politically, because in the same poll, 30% of respondents said they were less likely to support a politician who uses it. How does that translate into our political sphere, especially since Democrats in states like Florida, Texas, California, New York want to hold on to this community as a voting bloc?
I mean, I think particularly Democrats, right, should always attempt to be as inclusive as possible, right? I don't think that the answer is always to pay attention to the majority. You know, at times, the North Star is to pay attention to the most marginalized communities. I asked the same exact question that you're asking me right now to organizers from Arizona, from Florida, and from Texas. And the question was terms like defund the police or abolish ICE or Latinx. You know, these are terms that may seem too radical for some Latinos. So what do you do in those moments? I asked them. And the response to me was always run towards the North Star. And that's sort of the role that I see myself play and that I see Democrats play. Aim for inclusivity, and this is a way to do it.
Before I have to let you go, for people who are watching this who are like, I love that people are able to define themselves as they see fit, but I'm super duper nervous about saying the wrong thing or using the wrong term. For people who are just nervous about navigating the terminology, what would you say to them before we go?
It's honestly, pronounce it however you want. That's the beauty of language. It's Latinx, though. You can say Latinx if it sounds better, but it's Latinx. My dad pronounces it in the craziest ways, and it still resembles the same meaning.
It's close enough. It's close enough. Paola Ramos, we appreciate you making time for us. The book is called Finding Latinx: In Search of the Voices Redefining Latino Identity. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Joshua. Bye.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.